They make the trek out to Burning Man for a week and a day. After a lot of work, oh, there's a lot of play. Party, 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 drama, 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 bitch, bitch, bitch. Year after year, they come back to scratch that itch. They all say their lives have been changed. After many years, lives have been rearranged. That change is what this show is all about. You'll see the impact of Burning Man up and out. So sit back, relax, and cancel all your plans. These are the stories about the shadow of the man.
Hello, and
Hello.
welcome to the Shadow of the Man. I'm your host, Andy. My goodness, that Andy? Today's guest is the one and only Coyote, or Tony Perez. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
All right. So I do have some listeners who've never been to Burning Man or don't know much about Burning Man. So, the concept of the elevator pitch, right? It's like you're going up 10 stories. It's just like you have a couple floors to explain what your Burning Man history is like. I know you have a long and continuing history, but it's in about 20 seconds, how would you relate your Burning Man history?
One of the shortest pitches I did was in the back of a lift. I've done it back of a lift, elevator for certain. I think I did it once from when I was in handcuffs in the back of a car. I had to do the elevator pitch. So what is the elevator pitch of what is Burning Man?
Oh, what is your experience in Burning Man? Who are you? Yeah.
I am the city superintendent of Black Rock City. I've been working with it since '96. Back then, we really didn't have a Department of Public Works. We were just some grunts that had got out there and were picking up the work. But '98, we decided that we really needed to make a department out of it so we could track our jobs and actually create a budget. And the spreadsheets showed up, and it became an actual department, which was started by Will Roger, Flynn, Mouthy, and Rod Garrett, and myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so in '98, we formed the Department of Public Works. So I've pretty much been working to build Black Rock City ever since the 1900s, as my son say. Dad, you've been doing it since the 1900s.
Back when it was black and white.
Yeah, right. Back before we had film for the cameras. Anyway, very quickly I became the city superintendent, which is in charge of actually setting up the city grid. And if somebody still gives me the blank stare at that point, I say we're the carnies. Yeah, we're the desert carnies. We're the ones that are the first ones there, the last ones off. We set it up. We hunker down for that crazy, weird week called Burning Man. And then for the next 4 to 5 weeks after that, we tear it all down, put it in containers, send it out to our ranch, put it to bed, and wake it up again in the spring.
Oh, awesome. Great. So where does it all begin? Where does little Tony grow up? Where are you born? Where are you from? What's your
Oh, well, I was
story?
born in Mexico, but I was raised by my Irish mom in Detroit.
Oh.
And with a lot of sisters, my parents separated really early on. And so I don't have very much ties with my with my Mexican side of my heritage. We grew up in Detroit, and then came out. I spent my my high school years in Traverse City, Michigan. Moved down to Kalamazoo. So I'm a Michigander,
Okay.
and we grew up in a situation where we never were really allowed to leave anywhere, to go any place. The only state line I'd ever crossed was Ohio. And so when I was 20 years old, I hopped on a motorcycle and I wanted to bartend my way across the country, which I kind of. And I ended up in San Francisco in '79, and my dreams was to be a musician, which I accomplished those dreams. I traveled on the road with the band, a pretty successful one I was on the road for about 12 years or so, maybe 15. It's hard to remember. Then I was a house band in North Beach for another 8 years. So I was a successful musician.
What did you play?
I'm
What do you play?
singer and saxophone. I still have a band. And that's I was right around in my 15th years of professional musicianship is where I stumbled upon Burning Man. So it's essentially it was a hero's journey.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
yeah.
I was living my dream, traveling around the country as a musician, and but that even that can get pretty old, and my career had sort of plateaued when
Okay.
when I stumbled on Burning Man, which is a whole different thing that happened there.
So it was like mid 90s or so. So were you living in San Francisco at that point, or?
Yeah, I've been when I moved to San Francisco in 1979, I was 20, and I just never left. I'd
Ah,
found my home. I never needed to find a different town. It's still my town. I'm broadcasting right now from the Lower Haight district of San Francisco. I've been here since
ah,
95.
okay.
I'm here with my wife and children, who my both my kids have no intention of leaving San Francisco either.
Yeah, yeah. And I moved there, like I told you earlier, like was it 94, 2001? Like my brother still lives there. I can still come back and like visit like
Oh yeah,
once a year. It's like,
it's
uh,
getting a lot of bad publicity. Politics is starting to trash it a lot, but it's still an amazing town. It's a town of
yeah.
thinkers and a lot of possibilities, open mind. We like I've said about Burning Man, we create our own boxes to think outside of.
Yeah, exactly.
So San Francisco, it's really not a very large surprise that an event like Burning Man would have been spawned out of a city like San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
always said that Burning Man was the runaway teenager of San Francisco.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so what brings you to Burning Man? Because I remember in your book you had a friend. So did your friend like went to Burning Man before and was like, "Hey, come on out"?
Yeah, I made friends as soon as I moved into the Lower Haight in '95,
Mm.
and one of the friends I made was this guy that lived across the street. His name was Jason Norelli, who actually I just was talking to him this afternoon. We still both live in the Lower Haight.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's been almost 30 years.
Wow.
And he hasn't changed much, and neither have I. We still got the same core, just 30 years old.
Hmm.
But Jason was across the street, and he was the light in my wilderness because at that point my music career had pretty much plateaued, and I was kind of in a mental rut, a creative purgatory is what I call it in the book, where I just playing the same stuff every night and just really having an existential talk with myself of where is this all going. And it's not the first time people have gone to the desert to rearrange their thoughts. That's why gurus have notoriously gone to the desert and sat on top of mountaintops and so on.
Hmm.
And Jason, like most people that I've talked to, they didn't decide to go to Burning Man. They were told to go to Burning Man, and
Mm.
that's what Jason had said to me. Of course, back then Burning Man was a different. It had the same core but different values. I think you were there in '96.
Yeah. Well, I think 96 was kind of what was definitely one of the transitionary kind of periods. I don't know, for me, I kind of break it down to like the Baker Beach years, like 86 to like
Yeah,
90 or so, right? And then
that was toddler.
uh yeah, yeah. And then like 90 to 96, I think I was calling those kind of almost like the cacophony years. It seemed like, I mean, like 96 was the first time I went, but just from the history that I've read, it was like, it just started out as like with like Desert Site Works and there were some other groups and like a cacophony, and then like they invited Larry to bring like his man out there. So then like everybody kind of all kind of grew together. And even as this whole ethos nowadays, like the youngsters are all, like, oh, the 10 principles, it was like Larry went to the mountain and forged them in stone after talking to like, the great Burning Man in the sky.
And
And it was like, actually, all of those different principles kind of just grew up like
yeah,
weeds or whatever, like, like as time went by, there was, remember the whole no spectators thing,
yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
if
leave no
there's
trace, like participate.
yeah, if there's an elevator pitch type of thing when it comes to the principles, is people really do sort of equate them to the commandments, and they're nothing of the kind. Where they came from was Larry and company wanted to know why Burning Man was becoming so popular so quickly, and they wanted to know what was it that was bringing people back, and so they were trying to identify the behaviors that we were already encompassing,
Hmm.
and that's where the 10 principles came from.
Yeah.
So they're not directives. They're just reckon. And if you look into the principles, some of them do conflict. It's
Oh yeah.
not a perfect thing. They're in conflict with it just a little bit. And it creates a dynamic tension that keeps the engine running.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I mean, also I think it was like when the regional network was kind of nascent and young. It was like 2003, 2004 or something when they were like, oh, we need to kind of put out like a set of principles, because yeah, like I said, like all of these ideas were kind of floating around. With like Larry, like like write down some things.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's funny because he came like, I have 9 principles.
Yeah.
They're like,
Came up
can
with
you make it
immediacy.
10? And that's like, yeah, that's where it was immediacy came from. But I remember reading it when I first, and I was like, huh, like,
I always think of the Mel Brooks scene where Moses comes back. Well, I have 15,
oh.
and he drops one of the temple. Oh, I have 10 commandments.
Yeah. Those other five were really good, but never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jason put me in his car, or he put himself in my car, and we buzzed out there, which is the opening scenes of this book that I finally wrote
Yeah.
into a book, and it was a whirlwind for
I
sure.
mean, no one's going to see the video, but yeah,
There it is, yeah, it's called
right.
Built to Burn. But the funny thing about it is
Oh, hold on.
yeah.
Before, I just want to let all the listeners know that Tony has written an awesome, amazing book. It's called Built to Burn: Tales of the Desert Carnies of Burning Man. I mean, I got mine on Amazon. I guess you can get it from like anywhere.
Yeah,
Get
Barnes and
books.
Noble, any of the book outlets, just get online and Google
So
it.
this Burning Man actually is the Burning Man project actually the publisher?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So anyway, not to digress in your story. So you guys get in the car in San Francisco, and
Well,
apparently you don't like pack a lot of stuff.
well, the thing is I think that nowadays people can really be ultra prepared when they go out there. They know a
Uh,
lot what to expect. But Jason did he didn't give me any warning. We just hopped in the car and went. And it was a scene right out of a Hunter Thompson book because it was drug fueled and we'd been up for a while and we were out on artificial stimulants and I'd been awake for 2 days. And so I
yeah.
had what I was driving into. And now I've been at it 30 years and I'm the OG out there, really. I'm the grandfather graybeard that is the desert fox that knows how to survive out in the desert. So people
Hmm.
don't believe how unprepared I was when
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I didn't even bring water, you know.
No, that was incredible because I'm reading the book. You were just like, oh, like your friend like took the time to like find a compass,
Yeah,
but
that's
but
all we
you
had was a compass,
yeah, but it's
sleeping
funny
bag.
because like my experience with me and my brother was like the exact opposite. It's like we had like a tiny little like a VW GTI, and at the
Mm.
last minute, like our friend Sharon was like, it's like Burning Man's brilliant. You guys should go. And we're like, oh, okay. Like again, we were kind of told to go, and it was like, you guys, you'd love it. You should go. And then at the last second, she's like, oh, can you bring my boyfriend Amin? He was like a DJ, and we're like, okay. And
Up
so
there.
yeah, it's like hop in, yeah. And so we bought food and we got I think it was like that 11 by 17 like just photocopy of like the survival guide. And like I think we just kind of like skimmed through it. And we're just like,
Sure, yeah,
hey,
yeah.
food, water, whatever, It's just like, oh, okay, directions. Okay, that's where it is. Looks like, and then we just go. And so then I remember we after getting off the blacktop, we hit the playa and there was like the little booth and there's someone that were like, where do we buy the ticket? And they're like, you see that line of cars? I was like, you got your compass, like pointed at this heading and go that way. We're just like, yeah,
Yeah.
you know. And there was just like this huge just plume of dust because everyone was just going as fast as
Oh,
possible.
wow. I was 120 miles an hour when I first went to Burning Man.
Yeah,
My
because I
miles
think
were
we
about like
did.
700. We had 100. I was hitting 120 on that.
Oh, yeah, we were like fully loaded. I mean, we actually had stopped. We picked up like firewood, and so Amin was kind of buried in firewood in the back seat of the car. Like I had like a styrofoam cooler on my lap. We didn't even have like real coolers. So then it was so dusty. We had no idea like where we were going.
Oh,
So
no.
my brother was like, "Oh, I'll just kind of go like
Yeah.
outside of the line of cars, and we'll just kind of follow the line of cars." But like everybody had that idea. So like
Yeah.
everyone was just taking off in all these directions.
Yeah.
So we just were like, let's just hit for daylight and then just keep going.
Just keep going. And boy, a lot of people missed it.
And we got lost.
Well, that is essentially why the Rangers were formed, because
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
work to actually go out and get all the little dogies and corral them back in
Yeah.
because they were going all over hell.
Yeah. So then I get there, I think it was like Saturday, right? And so eventually it was all these mishaps, and we finally eventually find it, and then we kind of camp, we find our friends in camp. But I think it was like Saturday night, and then our friend was like, oh, you should go to like the rave camp that was like a couple of miles away. And so we,
Sure.
we'd bring like a small bottle of water,
Yeah.
maybe a little flashlight, and all these
People get
cars
lost
just zooming.
at night. They're trying to get to the rave camp at night and they got lost. You get lost easily on that.
Yeah, yeah. So then it was like the next day we'd come back, and I was just, or it was like dawn, and we're coming back, and it was like Sunday, and I was just like, we're like, this place is crazy. It's like it smells like smoke like all the time. Like everything's burning. Like people are burning like polyester couches, and
Yeah, it was a different field for sure.
yeah, yeah. But it was like this is a scene out of Dante's Inferno. This is crazy. Like we almost died. We gotta come again.
Yeah. So yeah, Lenny, we went out there on Jason's. He had been involved with it for a couple of years prior, because Jason was a graffiti artist in City, and just a general artist in general. It's still a very, very
Uh-huh.
good. And one of his things that he would do is a lot of body painting. And
Mm.
Will Roger and Crimson Rose, who are still part of the LLC and part of the board of the Burning Man,
Hmm.
they're two of the founders, and they would do these fire acts where Crimson would dance with the fire, and Will actually blew fire, and so they'd play with fire,
Hmm.
and they would do it with Jason's body paint, which was very
Yeah.
tribal looking. It was really beautiful stuff. And so he was being asked to come back to do that function for them and be part of the camp. And at the same time, if we went like 4 days early, 3 days early, which back then was way early, now we go 8 weeks early.
Yeah, early it was like Wednesday or something.
Yeah, there's people that are year around now, but back then, if
Yeah.
you went 4 days earlier, you were the first ones out there because they
Yeah.
needed help setting it up. He said, let's go out and help them set it up. Then they'll all be camped out, and we'll be set up and ready to go by the time the actual event starts. And so we went
Hmm.
out early, and we were camping with Will and Crimson, and also camping with Larry Harvey and the founders.
Hmm.
So it was called Checkpoint Salon back then. And so my first Burning Man, I was already camping with Will and Crimson, who I still
Hmm.
camp with to this day at first camp. I never broke that tradition. And so we showed up working. But if you read the start of the book, it didn't start out all that well. Yeah,
It's an
yeah.
excellent book, listeners, that you should go out and buy it. It's an amazing story.
Well, yeah, I overdose, but
And
it
dehydrated and didn't
but
sleep for 2 days.
I sprung back and built the promenade by myself, and that was my first actual task of Burning Man, is building that goddamn promenade with
Yeah.
spires up, which I still supervise that function of the city.
And then like let's see, so was it Flash that gave you like the niacin or
Yeah, he
something?
brought me down. Flash that's how I met him. I still am very close friends with Flash. We're still out there. He actually comes out there early as like I do,
Uh-huh.
and he rents a lot of trailers. He owns a lot of trailers, and he's sort of like he takes pride. He calls himself the slumlord of Black Rock City. I mean, his trailers aren't the nicest, but they're functional, good trailers.
Yeah, no, my friend, Jenny K?
Jenny Kane,
K. She was
K.
anyway, she was the last episode. Uh
Oh,
but she's a good friend of mine. But she every year we're actually at we're out elsewhere, in like my first camp this year.
uh, there's so I'm not familiar.
Yeah, but no, elsewhere
Oh,
was like
elsewhere. Yes, okay, I know what you're talking about.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So no, she has one of Flash's trailers. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, I spent a lot of time. It was like it's not it's very artsy.
Yeah, he's got a few. Anyway, Flash and I are still pretty close friends.
Uh-huh.
It's a point now where we get a lot of laughs out of the old days.
Oh yeah. Oh
Flash gave me
yeah.
niacin and saved my life. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, wow. Yeah, so that's like 96, your first year.
yeah. And
And
then
then after
I came right back in '97.
so because in 96, like we're saying, like that was kind of like a transition year.
It was.
I mean, there was a number of things happened. Was it Fury who died, passed away? It was a tragic accident,
Yeah, we
right?
we had fatalities on our belt. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's still a little unclear as to what actually came down. All we do know is that we had to change things. We couldn't go on like it was.
Well, it had to become like
Yeah.
professionalized, right? I mean,
Well, there's certain things happened all at the same time. 96 really did fall apart in a lot of ways, but it was essentially part of the hero's journey. You have to make bad choices and collapse and then rise from
mhm,
the ashes as the story goes. But what the biggest thing was we had gone from 4,000 people in 95 to 8,000 people in 96.
mhm.
Population doubled. And the original Burning Man, people think that Burning Man was started by like a hippie thing, like a rainbow gathering, but it's really nothing of the sort. It was
Yeah.
anarchists. It was people with guns. It was people that were rowdy that just wanted to live, without any scrutiny over them.
Mhm.
And they're all real clever people finding ways to blow things up safely. And so they were playing a dangerous game, but they were doing it uh smart. They were some of the safest, most dangerous people I'd ever met, if that
Mhm.
makes any sense,
Yeah.
you know. But they were, and so word got out that there was a lot of wildness going out and they were doing crazy things with fire, flamethrowers, for instance, and
Mhm.
large explosions and lighting large or very large things on fire. And people are attracted to that.
Oh
And
yeah.
so the next year came out, and 4,000 extra people showed up that also wanted to play that dangerous game, and things got too big and toppled.
Yeah,
And
let's throw propane cylinders into
yeah,
bonfire.
and so things we couldn't go on like that. And there's an actual scene in the book where I was camping with the organizers of the camp,
Mhm.
and it was the morning after, and I sort of crept in and joined the circle. They didn't even know I was there, but they were saying that things have come to a crisis. And half of the people said, "That's it. It's no more Burning Man. We can't continue doing this thing. People are getting hurt. This is ridiculous." But then there's other people who are saying, "Well, actually, we've built a pretty damn good community, and things were fine until burn night." And the community was the one that was wanted to go forward, living by these principles of
Yeah.
modification and civic responsibility and all these things that were
Yeah.
were budding. And so, well, we just need to reel it in somehow. And that was the first time the word the word came out that we were actually responsible for the safety of other people, which
Mhm.
is sort of the definition of a city. And it's so things really became a civic responsibility showed up. And so there's a lot of like there was people that were from the beginning with Burning Man that said, well, that's not what this has ever been about. This has been about exactly the opposite. So I'm out of here. We said, well, wait
Mhm.
a minute. If we just reel it in somehow, then we can continue on building this really creative maker community. And so that's what happened. And we had to reel it in. And that's the first time something like a fence shows up. And it really shows what a fence really does to a society. And people are going, a fence? Are you kidding me? This is never what we wanted. We wanted to be in our cars and just going, into the openness without any restraint at all. A fence is fencing us in. And so the fence changed everything. And but we had to, and then we had to say no more weapons. We have to reel the guns in,
Mhm.
obvious reasons. And also the biggest one was we couldn't just drive around like crazy anymore. We had to get out of our vehicles and make it just art cars, which was that was a lot of heartburn on that one. But we were
It's
able,
also a lot more interactive, I
yeah.
mean, yeah.
And then the final thing is that's where my job comes in is we had to build an actual city grid, actual roads and addresses.
Yeah, because I remember
That
'96, it was just
it was just one circle road,
like,
and then it
yeah,
stretched to
they were
infinity.
just, yeah, it was like everywhere. Yeah.
Exploded out from there. But we had to have roads, and that was for emergency response. Quite frankly, if someone's camp's on fire, we had to get some
We have to have
be
an address,
fire
be
truck in
able
there to
to,
put it out.
yeah. If we say that we have an emergency, you have to tell them like where.
Yeah, we have to tell them where. So we,
Yeah.
we came up with city grid, and people thought that was way too organized. But the opposite sort of happened is because it gave the city capillaries. And once it had capillaries, then
There's a
a
blood
lot of
flow.
creativity was able to flow a lot more. It,
Yeah.
it was sensible. And so essentially
So
grew up a little bit.
were there like previous to '97, like '96 and earlier, like was there like a permit that the BLM would give, or was there any kind of
Yes, there
like
was.
what
They
was the
had
organization like before
that
that? Like, was
that
this
was
kind of
that yeah, that was a different interview because I was always out in the desert.
uh
And it was the LLCs that were being formed in San Francisco are the ones that were dealing with that side of Burning Man, which is an equally as fascinating story.
yeah. But I
Uh,
always kind of thought that's kind of started in '96 or something, or was it predate
Stuart
that?
Mangrum would be the person to interview on this one because
Uh,
it was
eh,
the first time that we actually pulled a permit, and then I what I remember is that LLC was formed that was only lasted a year, and every year they started a new LLC, and then
uh,
eventually they just made an LLC, and now we're a nonprofit now that has an LLC under its umbrella.
yeah.
But so the business side of it grew, and the whole time it was permits with BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, and
Okay.
also with Pershing County. So the whole story of law enforcement and the BLM story still continues on. We
Hmm.
finally have ourselves on pretty solid footing with them. We're we're a windfall for them. We're we're the largest land usage permit ever, uh, you know, given out, and still will be. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
even with these changing of tides that are going on in the nation right now, I think Burning Man will survive because of the economy that it generates.
I wonder, like, if you look at like the Bureau of Land Management, like their budget, the line item of like income,
Yeah,
of
right.
like
That
all of the various places and this and that. Because I'm sure they're government agency, they probably don't make a huge
yeah,
amount of
no, not like
income,
Burning Man, so
but what would Bernie Man's percentage of this income
yeah,
be? Like,
that's not my
I
that's not
don't know.
my
It's kind of
wheelhouse.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
So
I'm
another,
sure they would notice it if we were gone.
yeah, yeah. That might make some complaints, but then when you're gone, it's like, oh,
Well,
hey.
there's another person who would notice, people that would notice it is Reno. And we've had some struggles with the Bureau of Land Management. That's matter of public record. We all know that
Yeah.
we've our tiffs.
Hmm.
And there was one time that things got starting to boil over, and the mayor of Reno actually stepped into the foray
Really?
and said, hey, what's going on here? Burning Man's they've always been right with us,
Hmm.
and we it's there's quite a boost that happens to our economy every year when people are, you know, going to Trader Joe's.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Everywhere along the way, like
Yeah, it's good
Empire,
for a lot of
Gerlach.
besides we've really brought a lot of art to the city. We've really we've made a lot of awareness. We're building a community really, and it doesn't really know any boundaries. So the even back then there was a struggle going on, but the struggle was more with the local sheriff than it was with the Bureau of Land Management.
Because in '97 it moved to the Wallapai Playa, right? And that was was it over the county line or something?
Yes,
Was it?
it was in Washoe County then.
Yeah. So it was like a different law enforcement you guys were
Yes.
dealing with.
The jurisdiction had changed. And so that made 97 a very peculiar one-off year that's the second part of this book that
Yeah.
where
Oh
things are
yeah. I
really
just
weird.
love I gotta say like one of my favorite scenes in your book was when what was it? They had to get the sheriff to sign off on something, and he was like he was refusing, and they finally came around. I was like, okay, okay, I'm finally going to sit down, and then like like Will Rogers there, and I don't know what he was like a tutu or something, or
Wearing a G string and a silver hard hat. That's all they had on.
yeah, and Crimson's wearing whatever, and then it was it was the Aesthetic Meat Foundation. I
Right.
remember those guys like.
Yeah. They didn't come back. They've never been back.
Sorry.
They took off.
Yeah, but just like those viewers, listeners, you have to read the book for this one scene.
Well, it
I'm
was
not
the
going to
only
give it
time we
away,
saw this.
but like that was awesome when he
Yeah, the
throws
only
his
time we ever
hat.
saw this guy, he lost his cool. Boy, he flipped out. And the Aesthetic Meat Foundation showed up because they saw the helicopter land, and so they knew the sheriff was
Oh,
right.
so that was intentional?
Oh, absolutely, it was intentional.
Wow.
Believe,
Wow.
I mean, who didn't see the helicopter? A helicopter landed. I mean, blowing everybody's tents away.
Yeah. So okay, so for the listeners who might not have been around that time, where people never been to Burning Man, the Aesthetic Meat Foundation what I remember, like they were like, well, the story was they were a group of like what vegans or vegetarians or something, and
Oh,
so
I
they
don't know the backstory.
like that's what I heard, and then they're like, oh, they're protesting like people eating meat, so uh they brought like all of this like these animal carcasses and blood and
Oh,
entrails,
that's very
and
visceral.
they would like put them on these like gothic like spikes, and they would just like spew blood just like on the
Yeah,
plane.
blasting goth music and
Yeah. And then
they were frightening. They were very
yeah.
scary people.
And then they were doing the suspension thing, which people who don't know suspension, it's like when you put hooks through your skin and you're
Yeah.
suspended by that, whether it's
Well,
like
they actually, for those who do know Burning Man and know of the Thunderdome, and those who don't, there's an actual Mad Max Thunderdome that comes out every year. They're in their getting into their third decade out there, and they hang from harnesses and have bouts. Well, the Aesthetic Meat
just like
Foundation,
the movie. Yeah.
just like the movie, yeah. They went in there just that one year, and they were hanging from their piercings in the Thunderdome.
In the Thunderdome.
In the Thunderdome. And people don't believe me when I say that, but it was true. And those guys were hardcore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the getting back to our relationship with the sheriff in '97, we did have a usage permit, and it was signed the day of the burn.
Ah.
That's how iffy things were. Because right now people are saying, well, they're uncertain. Our future is uncertain. And I'm going, it's always been uncertain. We've always been on shaky ground because that's what happens when you're forging into new territories and creating a communal effort that's becoming global. It's going to be on shaky ground.
Yeah. And then like the sheriff sees the box office, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
all the money. And then I remember I specifically remember this scene like being there, like Larry on some soapbox, be like, if you
yeah.
just give us like $500, like you get a ticket to Burning Man for life. And I remember looking at my pockets, I was like, I can't afford $500 right now,
Yeah, but those people that did still got that. We were holding
I have
that.
at least two friends, like my friend Curtis. I don't know if you go Curtis Coleman, another I think George Papp. He was actually my first guest in this. Like I think like he is like, oh yeah, I got my ticket every year. They keep sending this even to this day. Like they keep
Yeah,
sending me a ticket.
we're not
I
gonna.
was like, what a great investment that $500 would have been. Like
He was standing on a hay bale.
hay bale. Oh, yeah. Well, the man was on a hay bale back then. It was like the man was on a
Yeah, it was
pyramid
all on
scheme.
hay bales. What a mess. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah, well, it's trial and error. You learn.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when I was talking to Andy Grace about this, like in '96, like somebody described it as they said, the volunteers burned down everything and all left, you know,
Yeah.
and then had to kind of build a new organization or just kind of go in a more professional like direction.
We didn't know if there was going to be another year from year to year. It was definitely. When Will called me for '97, I was shocked. I said, "Really? It's still going?" He said, "Yeah, yeah. You did a lot of good work out there. We got to build up this ranch so we can house law enforcement. We need some hands to clear out these houses, and maybe you want to do some work this weekend." And I said, "Sure, I'll come out."
So you went up like from San Francisco up there for a couple of weekends, like over the summer or something that
Yeah,
year.
just like I said, my music career was boring me to tears, and so
Uh,
this whole new thing, man, I'd found a posse. I'd found some cool people that I wanted to hang out with, man. These people were thinkers and movers and shakers and dreamers, and they had possibilities in their mind, and we can do this and we can do that. And it just woke my spirit. I had all these rusted gears in my brain that were like just chewing on this new thing to do.
yeah.
Every year, it still challenges me every year where we have to constantly pivot. And when we're hiring people and we're doing interviews for management positions, that's one of
Mhm.
my things is how good are you at pivoting? How good are you with solving problems in the moment? And we always called ourselves we were field driven solution managers, where
Uh,
we had to solve things out in the field because
mhm.
it's curveballs all the time everywhere. And that will always be the case because where we are when building it, we're in a very everything breaks down. Imagine a world where not even duct tape works.
Yeah. But I mean, Burning Man to me, like, I mean, to this day, especially in the early days, was yeah, like I don't know, like innovators, but like I just remember, God, what was the term? It was like when you find stuff, it was like obtainium.
Obtaining. That's Michael. He coined that one.
Yeah, but just I would was always blown away by like people taking ordinary objects and then combining them in surprising ways and coming up with just unbelievable things, and
Yeah.
sometimes just junk.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just kind of this mentality of people. It's like, yeah, it's like you're going into the desert or like something breaks in your car. It's just like, well, I got some,
Yeah.
like this and
Oh,
that,
my
and like
driver together. We can get off,
make it work. Like,
that's why this last year when we had the mud storm, it was the equalizer.
yeah.
Rock star superstars trudging through the mud and riding back a pickup truck. Like, yeah. And then going to the local bar and having a shot and a beer. But is that Chris Rock sitting at the bar? Yeah, it is. As a matter of fact, we were calling it if you walk to the shore, you were Chris Rocking it to the shore.
But he
But
wasn't alone, right? Did he
yeah.
have God, who was in the pickup truck with him?
Oh,
Diplo?
Diplo. Well, he won't let you forget it either. But they had an adventure. They're
Yeah.
out of their comfort zone, by God. And they had to solve their problem in real time.
I
And
mean,
so,
did people really think that, like, oh my God, these rains are going to go on for 2 weeks and we're going to have run out of
yeah, people
food?
thought that they were flooded for good. And it was, and I understand that if you don't, if you don't know the playa, and you wake up and you're in a lake, I can see some people hitting the panic button on that one. I got to get home.
Yeah.
Those who know is that lake is only 48 hours at the tops. It's going to go away. And so it was up to us to became town criers, just going up and down roads in streets saying everything, just stay put. There's plenty of food here. There are all the supplies you need. If you run out of food, your neighbor has a chili bar that
Yeah. Yeah.
has 20 cases of hot dogs sitting in their coolers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Food all around you.
Well,
You
that's
know,
one of the things about Burning Man is, they say, oh, bring everything you need to survive, but it's like everybody brings like way too much,
oh my God, it's the craziest potluck dinner you've ever been to in your life.
Yeah. I mean,
It's
every year in the playa, like towards the end of the week, by like Friday, Saturday,
you
people are just
guys
like,
want some of this, you want some, they're just handing you stuff.
yeah, yeah.
There's some guys used to come out. They were called the tuna guys.
Oh yeah, I know the tuna
You remember
guys.
the tuna
Yeah.
guys?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they would have sashimi out on the playa. Nobody thought that was possible.
Okay, so for the listeners, the tuna guys brought a refrigerated truck, right? Like they think they're fishermen, right? And so I don't know where they're off the coast of like Oregon or Northern California or somewhere, right? And so I don't know how much tuna, but it would have been like tons.
Yeah, enough for all of us to know about them.
Like,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm talking to you, and you remember the tuna guys, so that's all I
Well,
brought.
there was one year, I think it was 2006, because we had our Hawaii camp. It was called like the Kapalina camp. And so we would have this, like, we would have like a 120-pound pig on a rotisserie cooking for like 9 hours. And so it was a potluck. So we had all of this food and we had a line of like somewhere between 750 and 1,000 people. Like
Yeah,
the pig went, no joke, like 15 minutes. It was just evaporated, you
there you
know?
go.
Yeah. And then the tuna guys like tap me on the shoulder. We're just like, hey, do you need some help?
Yeah, right.
And then they were like, hey, we need some help because we have a freaking truck full of tuna.
All right.
So they just kind of they just started sashimi up everything. And like, I
Yeah.
mean, it was literally thousands of people. I mean, I'm not sure if the Department of Health is listening right now,
Well,
but
that's the thing is that they were flying under the radar.
yeah.
And like I would spend a lot of time in the camp called Camp Carp. I don't know if you remember Camp.
Oh, I know that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was more of the working man's camp. So a lot of the crew would hang out there. As a matter of fact, I still know Russ Leslie very well. He's a super good friend. He lives in West Oakland. And he doesn't bring Carp out anymore, but all the carp campions still gather. And I would always come in because the tuna guys would come to first camp and say, hey man, I got all this stuff. You want to, like this big, huge, like 20-pound piece of meat,
Yeah, yeah.
going to spoil. like in 10 minutes. You
So
have to
start
eat it
eating.
now.
Yeah.
You have to eat it now. So I handed it to Russ, and Russ, he's a sushi dude. Boom, 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 blah, 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 blah. Now we're all eating like California roll with tuna in it, and in the desert, living like like royalty. Goodness.
Yeah.
Now,
So, well, are they still around? Or I heard that like Department of Health was just like, no, 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 you
yeah,
can't do this anymore.
there was some issues with their refrigeration, but nobody ever got sick out of it.
Huh.
We've had to toe the line in a lot of, we're way on the radar now.
Mm.
So even with our workforces and so on, we have a labor force, and we have to hand them just like everyone else.
Yeah.
Everybody has time cards now. They have to punch clocks,
Yeah. No, it's funny because like a number of years ago,
time and all that shit.
yeah, like I don't know, I had this ongoing just kind of joke, I made sure to tell everyone this was a joke, but I was like, one of these days, I'm gonna start a camp, or maybe a camp, but we're just gonna go around. We're gonna have like reflective vests and clipboards and like these big orange stickers, and we're gonna be Playa OSHA. Okay. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go up to DPW vehicles and we're gonna put this giant orange sticker on their windshield saying violation. I remember every DPW person that I talked to, they're like, that's a death warrant.
Well,
Like,
the first thing they would do if that would happen, the very first thing is they would get on their radio and they would turn it to DPW Ops channel, and they would Coyote. Some guy just put a OSHA violation sticker at what's going on. They would call me immediately, and I'll tell you why. I am the in-house OSHA trainer.
well, now there actually is OSHA on the plane. It's funny because like all
I
these
am
years later,
you're
yeah.
interviewing the in-house OSHA trainer.
Oh wow.
I've actually put out almost 600 cards now. I've been OSHA trainer for 8 years.
Wow.
So if someone came with that prank, I'd want to meet them.
No, but it's funny because like for many years, just like seeing all of these like structures people are putting up and they're going
Oh, well,
way up on these
that's the
ladders, like,
thing.
ah.
I've actually gone through the camp and say you really can't put 3 bays of scaffolding on a school bus and then drive it around. You can't.
Yeah, yeah.
So, it's always been culture versus safety. I actually teach that in my class, culture versus
Mhm.
safety. But we have come a long way, and we still are going a long way. So, getting back to what brought us out in the first place, it was the community really that brought me back.
And it still brings you back, right? I mean, for me, it's like when it comes down to like, like all these years later, it's just like, well, what's like, why, why spend all this money? Why go all this way? Like, it's like you're going to this environment that very well can kill you. It tests every relationship you
Why you
have.
do that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, it's the community, and
yeah.
I don't know. I've had some debates with people online because, especially, I think like some younger burners who are like, "Oh no, it's about the 10 principles. It's all about you just got to follow the 10 principles." I'm like, the 10 principles is a recipe that leads you to community, you
Yeah.
know. And it's kind of like my last episode. I was talking to Jenny K because she kind of like grew up like in a religious like church community, and it's the fellowship. It's the when the chips are down, like when the flooding in North Carolina, whatever. Like it's like the people come together, and they if I have a warm place, you can come and stay. If I have food, I'll help you. And I think like going to the desert and Michael Danger Ranger, like drawing that line and everybody crossing over, it's like going to this temporary autonomy zone. Like this is a different than the place where you came from.
Yes.
And we're creating this community where you can feel safe to express yourself and be yourself and be as Bill and Ted would say, be cool to each other. but
How
it's the
refreshing is
community.
that? It's so refreshing.
Yeah.
When I come back, because I spend 10 weeks out there, and you really sort of kind of forget what it's like back at home. And I love San Francisco, but it's still a city,
Hmm.
and it still has its angst. And when I first get back to the city, it's always a culture shock to come back into the thriving metropolis, and it always hits me hardest, believe it or not, at the Bay Bridge Toll Plaza.
Yeah.
And it's because everybody's just cramming in and trying to get ahead of everybody else, and all the love is gone, you know? None of this, no, no,
Yeah.
nobody ever says, no, no, you first. Nobody ever says anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you get out to the desert and you get to a temporary city in the middle of nowhere where the script is flipped, how refreshing. And how refreshing where somebody's not trying to make a buck on you. And where people, there's another thing that people really get wrong about it is first they call it a music festival, and I say, well, it's certainly not a music festival. It's a communal event. And another thing that they get wrong is they call it a barter town, but it's not.
That was stamped out a long time ago. I mean, I remember when people were like early on, people had like blankets and they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll trade this for that," and we're like, "What are you doing?" Like, "We're bartering," and then like there was
No, it's
put
not
stop
barter
to that.
town. But the like I said, when you're in the back of a lift and somebody finds out that you work for Burning Man and you start the interview, that they still have this misconception that it's a rave camp, that it's a barter town, that people are rolling around on drugs in the mud. And I'm going, well, no, it's actually not like that at all.
So okay, at what point did music enter the experience? Because I'm sure like when you guys went in 19, well, not you, but like in 1990 when Cacophony invited Larry to bring the man, it's like I'm not sure what was there a rave camp that year?
I don't know. I know it was there in 96. And
Yeah.
as you said, it was parked like several miles outside. You had to drive,
Yeah.
you had to journey to it.
It was always like a separate kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then like like you said, like they had to build the grid in the city, that's when they're like, okay, we'll put them at like the 10 o'clock and the 2 o'clock, you
Yeah.
know.
I think Burning Man is known uh, as a rave event just because they have the loudest speakers. I mean, there is all kinds of music out there, but the rave music takes over.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure anywhere else on this planet you'll see. I don't know what I've been calling the sound barges.
oh
You
God, yeah.
they're like, yeah, like a Mayan warrior, like, Robot
They
Heart.
used to come into center camp and keep us awake, but we actually had to
I
make an
thought I heard them this year.
yeah. It was
Yeah.
we had to make an ordinance.
Yeah, about the deep
We
play.
can
No,
believe
there were definitely
the ordinance.
some days, some nights I remember seeing them like between center camp and the man, and yeah,
They just boom, 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 you know.
yeah.
And it doesn't stop. A quick story here is because I'm the city superintendent, a lot of times things fall onto my plate. I'm the one that has to go take care of it. And there was I think Wednesday after the event where we're all back at work now. We're tearing things down, we're loading trucks. We got to get off this playa. We only got like about 2 weeks to break everything down.
Hmm.
So we're not nobody's partying anymore. We're in bed by 9, 10 o'clock. We have a couple of beers. We wake up at 7 and get it going. And so there was one camp that was still partying.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And they were loud as could be. Boom, boom, boom. They were just canvassing the whole city with this one sound system. And it was dawn and they were still thumping away. And so my radio's going off, Coyote, you need to go out there and talk to him. Said, I'm already getting my pants on. You know, I'm already starting the truck. So I drive out there and they were at 10 o'clock. And they had this semi truck that had $1 million worth of sound equipment on it easily, just pumping away. And count them, 5 people were dancing.
Wow.
5 people were keeping everybody else up. And so I go, come on, you guys. Oh, well, just let me finish my set. And I said, no, you don't finish your set. Just, I didn't even know you guys had sets. Now it sounds the same to me.
Yeah. Well, you should have brought your saxophone.
Oh,
Yeah.
I did actually in my first couple of years, I brought my band out there. But it was just too much work. It was really, really a heavy lift to bring everything out there, and it destroys sound systems. I don't know how
Oh, I'm
some
sure. Yeah.
and it was just I just didn't do it anymore. Besides, my saxophone really took a lot of. It's really hard on the horn itself. The guy that's been fixing my horn for years told me that he wouldn't fix it anymore if I brought it out to that damn desert.
If
So,
I
oh,
find play dust in this thing one more time, like...
I said, what'd you do? Drag it through the beach? The same guy's been fixing my horn for almost 40 years. You never
Wow.
know who you're going to grow old with.
Yeah, yeah.
My saxophone repairman and I are growing old together. Uh,
Yeah, so all these years, all this involvement, it's like so the whole like theme of the show, shadow of the man, it's about like the impact over time of Burning Man and like people, places, and things, So yeah, I mean like it seems like it had quite the impact in your life. I mean, how old were you when you first went? Like
36,
36, and you're what,
65.
65? So half your life?
Yeah, I never dreamed it would be like this. And I'm about to get my 30-year patch with DPW.
Wow.
We started DPW 98. When we started, did I ever think that I was going to be with this for 30 years? But there's several things that you fed me these questions a few days ago, and I've been thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And one of the things that really keeps me coming back is that it just, again, it never gets more boring, and it's always challenging. And I've really accrued quite a lot of institutional knowledge over the years with this particular event. And the more knowledge you have, the better you are at managing. And I've become a featured manager. A person of has have a lot of experience. I can help a lot of people out there.
Hmm.
Also, when I first, as you read in the opening scenes of the book, I was not a builder. I didn't know how to actually. I was not a working man in that. I was not a construction person.
Hmm.
But I found a new passion, and in just setting up the promenade, I found that all this long I had been a builder. And when you think about it, building songs and entertaining is there's it dovetails with building because you're still, it's a service. You're creating you're creating a place for people to thrive in. What I build, people thrive in, and there's a satisfaction in that. When
Yeah.
I had dreams as a kid, I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to go up that red carpet and grab that Grammy. I really did. But when I started building Black Rock City, I realized that there was the same amount of satisfaction in being the silent provider of possibilities for these people, that they could come into the city that you built, and they know that DPW put it together, but they don't really think that much about it. They just
Hmm.
Black Rock City, and
Yeah.
there's a certain honor of having this unspoken response, or unappreciated. It's not unappreciated, but it's
Yeah.
just,
Unsung hero.
yeah, kind of an unsung hero. The better you do the better we do our job, the less people know we're there.
Uh-huh.
And it really gives me some sort of validation. And the first couple of times that I stood up on an overlook and took a look at the city that I just built, I don't know if a Grammy would have been as satisfying as looking over the city that me and my newfound friends had produced.
Yeah.
And then to equally satisfying is to go up on that same lookout 1 month later and see that it's absolutely gone. There's a certain beautiful circle to that whole thing that just keeps
Hmm.
bringing me back. And in the meantime, I've really developed a lot of leadership skills. I've developed administrative skills. I've grown a lot in my thinking. The people that I've met along the way and still know, and the conversations that I have, even now, the conversation I'm having now, it's with open, amazing people that are just, they're not just using other people's ideas. They have their own ideas and
Hmm.
their own possibilities. And I just never stop meeting amazing people. And that's what keeps me back. And just to be a part of that fabric that actually matters, that's something that you cannot compare that to any other experience that I've had. In
Yeah.
the meantime, my wife Mel, Melissa Waters, she was part of the DPW back then. She's approaching her 25th year.
Hmm.
Department of Public Works. She worked on the sign shop, and we pretty much hooked up out there and built a family. We now have twin boys that are 16 that have
Oh.
been going to Burning Man since they were 4 months old.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And so and she now manages the offices. And so we're kind of a power couple, I guess you could say. And the boys we're showing that the Burning Man is actually spanning a generation.
That is one of the more incredible things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm all in. You
Hmm.
know, what's again, we don't know what the future's going to bring. I don't know. There's this new administration's going to bring a different department to the interior, and so we're going to be working with a different staff with a different agenda.
Hmm.
And so again, we don't know how it's going to affect us, but
Yeah.
we
I
do
mean,
know that.
Burning Man has a certain momentum too. Like, was it
Yeah,
Larry or somebody said it's like it's an oil tanker or a cruise ship? It's like it doesn't turn around very
yeah, it
easily. Like,
doesn't.
I mean, it will like I was talking to a first time burner on the bus this year, and he's coming back, and he was like, "Do you think it'll happen again?" And I was like, Burning Man, it's like it has this momentum, like it will just happen. Like it will, like nature will. Burning Man, the man will find a way. Like I mean, no matter what, like a particular political administration might try and strangle this golden goose, for the BLM,
Yeah.
but.
Well, I will read you a little quote from this book.
Sure.
And this is the morning after the 96 when the whole city caught fire. And I was Jason and Marlo and I stayed up all night long guarding our camp so that it wouldn't get torched because there were pyromaniacs that were rampaging the city.
Hmm.
And so the next day that was just everything would collapsed. And so I was pretty frazzled. So Jason and we were in a dust storm at that point, my very first dust storm. And I sat. It was really only a week ago that I was racing across the playa towards Black Rock City, my Mazda at dawn. Didn't an entire lifetime happen since then? The escapades of Black Rock City had taken such a dance in my soul that I'd grown an extra pumping heart in my chest. I was finally out of creative purgatory. Do you think it'll happen again next year? I asked. Come on, it has to. This isn't just a weekend party we started. It's a full-on social crusade. It's a full-on social crusade. They
Uh-huh.
better let us put it on because it's coming anyway. You can't hold back shit like this.
Exactly. That's beautiful. Yeah.
It was in 96 and we're still in the same frame. Whatever you got, there's Burning Man. It's this community that's got legs. A lot of
Yeah.
legs.
Yeah. No, I think that is the.
Global. It's
Oh
all over
yeah.
the world. One of the statistics that really stuck with my head this last year was for the listeners that there's a lot of regionals, what we call, where
Hmm.
there's other events that are going around the globe that follow the same sense of principles, and that we call them Burning Man regionals.
Hmm.
And more people attended the regionals than attended Burning Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's growing globally. And so you won't be able to hold it back. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
there's regionals all around the world now. There's little plants that are growing, and all of them are growing exponentially, like the first one did.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Exactly.
it gives me some solace.
Yeah. Well, also, I remember like a number of years ago, we were like trying to figure out like the numbers. It's like how many people have actually been to Burning Man, and I think it was last year or something like I kind of revisited these numbers again, and like you were saying, remember like for like 95, 96, what 4,000 to 8,000. I remember like I finding these lists of like the populations for like each year, and then going back and looking at like the
Yes.
censuses and like it's I mean if the data is kind of incomplete, but I think at this point, after this year, it's something like 500,000 people have been to Black Rock City for like at least once. And
Yeah.
then I remember it was Marianne or somebody told me that there's like, oh, like if you include the regionals, it's like it's closer, or it might even be like over 800,000 or
Yeah.
so, like worldwide.
I wonder if we're close to the million mark. I don't know.
Probably getting close. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But, I mean, it's a growing community. I mean, that's the thing. Is like people think it's like, oh, it's a music festival, and everyone just goes and they go back every single year. It's like, no. I mean, there's a fair amount of people go one in time and don't care for it, don't like it, or just for whatever. It's like, oh, this is a bird. It's hard for them to get to, so they can only afford to do it like once. Some people will be like, yeah, I'm just going for the party, and after 3 years, become like kind of jaded.
Yeah.
They're just like,
Well,
been there, done that.
we have that happen in our ranks with the staff. Some people stick around. Some people, they said, "I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm going to do something else."
Yeah,
Fine, that's great.
yeah.
Had to have it while we had. And then they'll come back, they'll take 5 years off, and all of a sudden they come back in a different, I'm back, you know.
Oh, I should show you this thing. So yeah, so this year on the playa, because I hadn't been last time I was on the playa was like 2011 or something. So then I went back this year, and so I retired as a regional contact in 2012 or something. So I was like, oh, I want to get together like the other like retired like regional contacts and like you're saying, like there's been a fair amount of people go like 10, 12, 15 years and then
Yeah.
life intrudes, it's like you have
Sure.
kids, whatever. So for the alumni reunion, I was like, we're having an alumni reunion. And so I made these t-shirts, but I also made these stickers.
Ah, graduated. Yeah, that's great.
Well, I don't know because I remember like Marion, like I posted the thing and she was like, "Graduated? What do you mean?" And I was like, "No, it's a good thing. It's kind of like you got your degree and then you go out into the real world and
Yeah.
then you bring your knowledge to the rest. It's not like the raver, like, oh, been there, done that. Whatever. What's the next
Right.
festival?
You don't, it does change you. Yeah, if you ask me how it's changed me, it's instilled hope in a lot of ways that we can still build shit together. And there's still it showed me that cooperation can be as powerful as competition.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing I always heard is that competition's the best tool of the devil.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, like, resilience too. Like we were saying, like you encounter hardship, and then you gotta like work together with people to overcome things. And it's like, yeah, it's an incredible lesson to take to the rest of your life. It's like when some small thing goes bad, like it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. It's the mud hit us all.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
there was what was interesting with the whole mud thing, getting back to that is the whole media storm that hit it was hilarious. And
Oh,
they kept looking for the failure and they just couldn't find it after a while. They kept
well,
looking for the disaster and there just wasn't one.
I think the media's likes a good disaster
Yeah,
story.
they were looking for the disaster. And
Yeah,
the only people that they were able to interview were the ones who left, which I think was only like maybe
yeah.
3 or 4 thousand people that actually left. And when you have the population of 80,000, that's a pretty small percentage. Everybody else just stayed put and opened their box of wine and got by the campfires and told stories. Nobody.
Yeah.
But it really showed that there wasn't a disaster, and it really frustrated me because the more important story was that it wasn't as a disaster, and they weren't interested in that story, which really is telling about how people are
Mm.
doing things right now. And so it is a fresh air to go out to Black Rock City and have disaster isn't the most important thing. It's like cooperation. We would succeed,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I
We-
think in terms of like the media or entertainment and whatever, in politics, even whatever, it is the disaster, it is the discord that kind of sells. Well, for these
Oh,
kids today, sells the newspapers, where it gets the clicks, it gets the attention. I mean, even like social media, it's just like what are the things that like go viral,
yeah, that's what I was just going to say is what happened to when Twitter turned to X. Now, if you go on X, it's just people fighting and a lot of discord and a lot of screaming at
Yeah.
each other. And it's like, wow,
Okay, here's an interesting idea, experiment. Like next to Thunderdome next year, we'll set up, I don't know, plus you get a long dome. Like which one attracts more people?
yeah. So, yeah, you see, we're not out of the woods yet,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. All right. Well, oh, been at about an hour now. Okay. Well, anything else you have to add? Anything you want to
Oh,
plug
just,
or
you know, I'll be going out there. I don't have any retirement plans. I don't know what's going to happen with my family. I know that I'll be building Black Rock City for as long as there's a Black Rock City, as long as they'll have me. And what's next is we're not done surfing this wave, you
Mhm.
know. And
Mhm.
so I'm around, and it's the same with my wife. we're all in on this thing. And even if the whole thing fell apart, we would take our skills and be involved in the community in some other way, doing the same thing. And so that's what I brought out of this whole thing. I believe I'm kind of I hope I'm a better person of all of this. Because when I joined in, I was in a kind of a dark place in my life with my music career, and just
Yeah.
when you hit a plateau where there's no creativity, I was playing in the bars a lot, and I was into my third shot of booze by the third set, and so I was anesthetizing myself in a lot of ways.
Well, that's a good marker and measure. It would just like look at it's just one simple thing, alcohol intake from when you were in your
Yeah.
20s, like versus now, be like, oh yeah, I am a better person.
Yeah, and it's uh I don't know where else to take it from here. I just to answer your question, it's really I've flourished in this environment. I was sort of built for it. It seems like all the things that I've done that I did it before I went out to Burning Man. It seems like I had been in preparation for being the city superintendent of Black Rock City. It utilizes all the skills that I've been amassing over my lifetime.
Yeah. So here's another thing that I've been kind of thinking about, like off and on. And I remember years ago coming up with this idea, and other people kind of picked up. My friend DM, I think, actually, my theme camp of the play called this. We call it like the Burning Acres Retirement Community. You know, no, but I mean, what about like having like a place for DPW or whoever, like veterans, who spent their life, like building this city, and
Well,
it's just like, and this is your reward. We have this little patch of land, and you can
yeah,
come
sure, that'd
and.
be fine with me. As long as there's a surf break close by, you know. But
Yeah.
that's you see, I'm the pioneer on all this. I co-founded the DPW in '98.
Uh,
You're the first one to get his 30-year patch. DA, who runs restoration, is right behind
hmm
me by 2 years, and he'll get his 30, he just got his 25. And so this is a reality because we're actually very actively writing SOPs, which is standard operating procedure reforms and the SOPs not only tell you how to do the job, but we're very concerned. We're very making sure that the SOPs have history of the job
hmm
of the cultures that we've created, because we don't want to lose that culture either. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll go out to put me out to pasture so I can write a second book. God damn it! Uh, the first book I was actually I got an honorarium from Burning Man to write it, and so I'd probably need to have another honorarium.
So you think you have another book in you?
Well, I do. I do. Do you remember that old beat up car that was that I got in the back, the Plymouth Volare that was
Oh, the Wednesday car?
yeah, the Wednesday
Yeah.
car.
Yeah.
Well, I still have that car.
Oh,
It still runs,
really?
and it's completely bashed to shit. And it sits on the it sits on the ranch right now, and it's sort of the flagship of DPW now. And the car itself has got thousands of stories to tell. And so the next book would be called The Volare Chronicles.
If
It
the
would take,
Volare can speak.
yeah. Oh, it's been listening the whole time. The Volare was alive. It's like my mother, or what's that? I can't remember what the car that's live.
Herbie the Love Bug.
Yeah, I don't know. There's
Or
been several storylines that
Kits.
come out where the machine is actually alive, and
Knight Rider, the kit,
yeah, Knight Rider was one. I almost said my mother the car, but that really dates me. That was the
Chitty
60s.
Chitty Bang Bang,
Itty
yeah.
Chitty Bang Bang.
The Mystery Machine.
Oh, the Volare Chronicles. The Volare's been alive this whole time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then something kind of getting back to what you said about being kind of like one of the unsung heroes, and it's like, oh, you imagine like going down the red carpet and getting like the accolades, but it's like you take a lot of pride and pleasure of just kind of sitting back and be like, I built this or I helped made this happen. Like, and in a large part, like this is kind of part of the genesis of like me making this whole show. You
Nope.
know, because I mean that's something I've been kind of interested in, this whole, it's like this shadow of the man, you know, it's like, because everybody always says, you know, like Burning Man's changed my life, you know, but I'm like, well, how does that actually look, you know, I mean, for someone like a bucket list thing, like, oh, I went to Burning Man once as this music festival, it's like whatever. You know, like I don't think it really, I mean,
Yeah.
even people like that, I mean, I'm sure it changes them to some degree, but like, yeah, someone like you is like, oh, you've been doing this for like decades and decades. It's like it is, and it's like you said, it's half of your life, and it's probably like, you know, your retirement, your future,
Yeah.
you know. And so it's like, yeah, I kind of want to, you know, bring these stories to people, you know. So it's like, so you're not unsung. Maybe we can sing your song a little,
Well,
you know.
I guess like if you wanted one last thought on all of this was uh, when I was on the road with the band and playing as a musician, I really had something to prove. I was never really quite sad. If I could talk to my young self in my 20s when I was traveling with the band, I would have told myself to really start appreciating the station that you're at that moment instead of always thinking that you could be put someplace better.
Hmm.
When I was because we the band I was with called at one point was called the Dynatones, and we were actually uh, doing pretty good. We had charted songs, and we were doing was staying playing stadiums and flying around, and we played 300 dates a year. So it was a
Oh,
success.
that's the poster behind you.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah, it is.
Oh, okay, I was
Not
looking
as
at that.
very,
I was like, I wonder if that, yeah.
yeah. But still, I was still really frustrated at that time. I had something to prove. And when I first started seeing the cities that I was building, I no longer had something to prove. And I think that was the biggest shift in my life that I still try to nurture that.
Is that kind of like the whole idea of just be happy with what you have instead of what you
Yeah.
don't have?
You
Yeah.
know, and it just, like I said, the satisfaction of not only being involved with building something like Black Rock City, but being involved with the cool people who built it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
On
Again, coming back
on-
to the community. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I mean, we sit back every year and just watch this thing populate with some of the coolest shit I've ever seen. Look, if the artwork or the interactive shit or super clever stuff or an
Yeah.
amazing
It's
dance.
just like people's
Yeah.
creativity, like where their minds, like, oh, they came up with this thing, like, you know, it's like where did you get that idea?
Yeah.
Like that's
Wow.
incredible. Like, yeah. I remember one year, I was early on, it was like 96, 97, or no, it was 97, 98. It was just like way out in the playa. There was just some light that was just kind of doing these funky things. And you know, you see some light and you start walking towards it. And then it's like first it's going left to right, then it's right to left, and then it's kind of like wow, I'm
Yeah.
like, What is this weird thing?" It's like we have to figure.
Wow.
And so we walk and walk. It's probably like a couple of miles or something, you know.
It is.
And we finally get there, and I think it's like the tail rotor of a helicopter, and on each end of it is an old like tube TV and like totally wired up, you know, and then it's just playing static, right? And it's just on this pedestal and this pole, and there's a simple electric motor, and it's
Yeah.
just like one, 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 like, you know, a simple, you know, like 1 RPM, like
And
revolution, you know. And there's just a simple thing, but like from across the play, it was just like, what is this crazy, like, what is this thing, is it magical, you know? And
yeah.
it's just
Well,
the
do
creativity
you
is
remember
incredible.
the nautical year?
Oh, the floating world.
Floating World. Yeah, there was a lot of dragons, of course, that happened that year. Sea creatures, sea serpent.
uh
And I remember that year I kept seeing a sea serpent that was very far away, which is for the listeners who haven't been to Burning Man, one of the things that really fuels it is that your perception, your perspective is skewed because of the nature of the flat expanse. So you can't tell if
hmm
it's close or far or large or small.
yeah.
And that really messes with your mind. And so that really fuels a lot of the creativity of the art projects that come out there. And so there was this serpent that had been swimming around in the open playa, and it was just gorgeous. This beautiful serpent. It had three parts to its body. It was a head, then the big body part, and then a tail.
uh
And I said, man, before this event ends, I want to get a close look at this gorgeous serpent. But it was always so far away. It was just this big, giant monster swimming in the open ocean. It was beautiful. And then finally, at the end of the event, it came into center camp, and it was a guy on a bicycle, and he was pulling three radio flyer wagons. that had wire mesh bodies that was covered with muslin and had Christmas
Wow.
inside. That was
Wow.
it.
Oh, that's
So there it
awesome.
is. Oh my God, it's just a couple of kids' wagons and
Yeah.
a bicycle. Oh man,
No, it's funny because like sometimes I describe to people, like, oh, describe Burning Man. I'm just like, well, it's a place where you'll feel like you're tripping, but you're completely sober.
yeah, you don't need the acid.
Yeah. And then, okay, well, one last way for me, like I remember it was around sunset. I can't remember, it was like later 90s, early 2000s, walking out in the playa, sun setting, and we look up in the sky, and then there's like a light, and then two lights, and then three lights, and then it's like this string of pearls just kind of like going across the sky, and then the ones at the end would wink out, and then the ones in the front, and then we
Yeah.
all looked up and we're just like,
What is that
we're
thing?
like, how the hell did somebody do that? Because we're like, we're at Burning Man. Somebody did that. Yeah, and we were all figuring out, let's like, okay, send up some like model rockets or something. No, no, kite. Like, yeah, no, I don't know. And then it was like maybe like 9 months later, like so we found out, it was like, oh, this was like a Russian like booster rocket that was like 15 years old that just happened to come through the atmosphere
I
at this
thought it was
precise
a Burning
time
Man.
and angle. Yeah, and we were just like, somebody did this. Somebody, somebody did this. Because
Uh,
otherwise, why are we seeing this right now? And we're all completely sober.
yeah, pretty funny.
Well, thank you so much, Tony, for your time. I mean, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, I mean, is there don't go blurting out your phone number,
No,
you
no.
know?
That's Coyote at burningman.org.
All right.
And
Awesome.
I think that's about it. Also, I have a website that's Tony Coyote Perez.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
that website takes you right to my books, and I got a bunch of blogs and writings and things like that in there.
Awesome. And again, everyone, the book is Built to Burn: Tales of the Desert Carnies of Burning Man by Tony Cody Perez by Burning Man Project Press.
And TonyCoyotePerez.com.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for everything. And I don't know if you ever want to come back on again and tell more stories. Like,
Yeah.
but thank you so much for everything.
Okay, absolutely. This was what I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this show, please subscribe, rate, and review it on Apple Podcasts. It just helps to get this show seen. Please tell a friend and help to spread the word. If there's enough support, we can do a lot more of these shows and publish more shows per month. If you would like to contact us about being a guest, what you think about the show, or whatever, please send an email to shadowofthemanpodcast, that's all one word, at gmail.com. You can also follow Shadow of the Man on social media on Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. The links for these pages are all available on the front page of shadowoftheman, all one word, .com. See you next month for a new episode of The Shadow of the Man.
Thank you for listening to this latest show. We have to make another one, so gotta go. Don't worry, for next month we already have one in the can. Very soon you'll be listening to a new Shadow of the Man.